The first warning came as a whisper of static, an electronic breath that lasted less than a millisecond. Most communication systems would have missed it entirely, but the Quantum Horizon Research Station was not most systems. Dr. Elena Rodriguez pressed her palm against the holographic display, her fingers tracing the faint anomaly that had just rippled through their deep space monitoring network. Something was wrong. Fundamentally, catastrophically wrong. Outside the research station's reinforced windows, the darkness of space seemed to fold in on itself. Quantum sensors began to scream, not with sound, but with a cascade of impossible mathematical equations that defied standard computational logic. Elena knew that moment would become the line of demarcation in human history, before and after. The anomaly expanded. Massive energy signatures erupted across Earth's orbital defenses, transforming the peaceful expanse of space into a nightmarish battlefield in less than 17 seconds. Defensive satellites, the most advanced technological shields humanity had ever constructed, began to dissolve like frost under an impossible heat. These weren't traditional weapons, they were living mathematics. Elena's training kicked in. Years of preparation, countless simulations, and cutting-edge research had prepared her for potential extraterrestrial encounters. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared her for the Vorax Collective. Swarms of biomechanical constructs emerged from quantum rifts, moving with a precision that suggested they were more than mere machines. Each unit was a perfect computational algorithm made physical, capable of adapting faster than human thought could process. They moved like liquid metal, like computational poetry, given three-dimensional form. The first wave targeted communication infrastructures. Global networks collapsed not through brute force, but through impossibly complex algorithmic infiltration. Entire satellite constellations went dark. Communication relays transformed into silent husks, their advanced systems rendered useless in microseconds. Elena watched through reinforced view screens as entire orbital defense platforms disintegrated. These weren't explosions in the traditional sense. Instead, the platforms seemed to unravel at the molecular level, their complex systems being systematically dismantled by an intelligence that understood technology at a fundamental level humans could barely comprehend. "This isn't an invasion," she whispered to herself. "This is computational surgery." The research station's quantum systems began defensive protocols, but Elena knew they were futile. Whatever was happening transcended traditional defensive strategies. The Vorax weren't just attacking human technological infrastructure, they were deconstructing it with surgical precision. Below, on Earth's surface, entire cities began experiencing cascading system failures. Power grids collapsed. Communication networks fragmented. Transportation systems ground to a halt. It wasn't chaos. It was a meticulously planned technological deconstruction. Elena's fingers danced across multiple holographic interfaces, attempting to gather data, to understand the pattern. The Vorax's computational approach was so advanced it seemed almost organic, a living algorithm that could predict and neutralize human technological responses before they could even be initiated. Most would have seen hopelessness in that moment. Elena saw a challenge. The research station's emergency protocols activated, preparing for potential evacuation. But Elena knew evacuation was meaningless. Whatever was happening transcended physical location. This was a conflict that would be fought in quantum spaces, in computational realms that existed beyond traditional three-dimensional understanding. Her colleagues looked to her, their faces a mixture of terror and desperate hope. Elena Rodriguez had built her entire career studying potential extraterrestrial communication scenarios. She had written extensively about the potential challenges of first contact. But academic papers and simulations were one thing. This was something else entirely. The Vorax Collective had chosen their target carefully. They believed humanity was just another civilization to be cataloged, processed, and assimilated. A species to be understood, controlled, and ultimately neutralized. Their first mistake was underestimating the spark of human determination. As the station's systems began to fragment, Elena made a decision. She would not become a passive observer in humanity's potential extinction. Whatever computational battlefield was emerging, she would find a way to fight back. The silent storm of invasion continued, but humanity's response was just beginning. The alien transmission arrived precisely 3 days, 7 hours, and 23 minutes after the initial attack. It came not as a traditional message, but as a complex quantum burst that would have appeared as incomprehensible noise to most computational systems. Dr. Marcus Chen sat in the emergency research bunker beneath the Pacific Geological Institute, surrounded by a labyrinth of quantum computing arrays. His workspace looked less like a military command center and more like a controlled chaos of technological possibility. Screens flickered with impossible mathematical sequences, each display showing fragments of the alien communication that had sent the world's top scientists into a state of collective bewilderment. Where others saw an impenetrable wall of alien data, Chen saw a puzzle. The transmission was a clinical, mathematically precise breakdown of humanity's predicted surrender. It read like a computational algorithm, cold, logical, absolutely certain of its conclusions. Most military strategists saw it as a demand for unconditional submission. Chen saw something entirely different. "It's not just a message," he muttered, tracing quantum wave patterns with his fingers against a holographic display. "It's a challenge." Hidden within the transmission were subtle variations, quantum-level fluctuations that most researchers would have dismissed as computational noise. But Chen had built his entire career studying the microscopic spaces between established scientific understanding. Around the world, isolated pockets of researchers began to connect, not through official channels. Those had been systematically dismantled during the initial Vorax attack, but through improvised communication networks, underground research stations, isolated university laboratories, retrofitted communication relays that barely qualified as functional technology. In a converted shipping container in the Andes Mountains, a team of Brazilian programmers worked alongside retired satellite engineers. In an abandoned nuclear submarine repurposed as a floating research platform, Japanese quantum physicists collaborated with marine communication specialists. A group of MIT dropouts in an old warehouse in Detroit created communication bridges using technologies that technically didn't exist. Humanity was transforming its greatest weakness, its fractured, competitive nature, into an unprecedented strength. Chen's fingers moved with practiced precision, creating computational bridges between these isolated research nodes. Each connection was a quantum leap, not just in technological terms, but in how humanity understood collective problem-solving. The Vorax had studied human communication networks. They understood our internet, our satellite systems, our traditional modes of information exchange. What they couldn't comprehend was humanity's capacity for improvisational connectivity. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A retired cryptography specialist in Cape Town discovered that the alien transmission contained subtle mathematical Easter eggs, computational challenges embedded within its structure. These weren't just communication markers. They were invitations. "They want us to solve this," Chen realized, his voice barely a whisper. The transmission wasn't just a message of conquest. It was a complex puzzle waiting to be decoded. The Vorax hadn't just attacked humanity. They had challenged humanity. Military leaders struggled to comprehend the transmission. Intelligence agencies scrambled to create traditional defensive strategies. But the most innovative minds recognized something profound. This was a communication that existed beyond traditional linguistic or technological boundaries. Chen's team began constructing quantum-entangled communication networks that could bypass traditional infrastructure. They weren't rebuilding what was lost. They were creating something entirely new. Each isolated research group became a node in a living, breathing computational organism. Information flowed not through traditional pathways, but through quantum-encrypted channels that defied standard interception methods. The Vorax had calculated humanity's response with mathematical precision. They had modeled every potential scenario, every likely method of resistance. They had not calculated human creativity. As the emergency research bunker hummed with computational energy, Dr. Chen allowed himself the smallest of smiles. The invasion wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. Humanity was about to show the universe exactly what it meant to be truly adaptable. Conventional warfare became impossible the moment the Vorax arrived. Their predictive technologies could neutralize standard military responses with terrifying precision. Traditional defense strategies would be like throwing stones against an advanced quantum computer. Captain Elena Rodriguez understood this immediately. From her makeshift command center in the Atacama Desert, a complex of interconnected shipping containers retrofitted with cutting-edge communication systems, she watched the global resistance take shape. This wasn't a unified military response. This was something far more powerful, a distributed, adaptive network of human ingenuity. Mining colonies in the asteroid belt transformed into unexpected strongholds. What the Vorax saw as simple resource extraction sites became fortresses of human resistance. Automated mining drills became precision weapons. Communication relays became computational warfare platforms. Orbital repair stations converted into defensive networks that could reconfigure faster than the alien systems could predict. "We're not fighting," Elena told her core team. "We're evolving." Each human settlement became a node of resistance. A research station in Antarctica developed quantum disruption technologies. A repurposed offshore oil platform in the Gulf of Mexico became a communication hub that could bounce signals through impossible computational pathways. University laboratories around the world transformed into research cells, each working on unique approaches to neutralizing the Vorax threat. The alien invaders had studied human military history. They understood conventional warfare, hierarchical command structures, and predictable response patterns. What they couldn't comprehend was humanity's capacity for spontaneous, decentralized innovation. In the Siberian wilderness, a group of former telecommunications engineers created a communication network that existed between traditional technological spaces. It wasn't a network in any traditional sense. It was a living, breathing computational organism that could adapt, shift, and reconfigure faster than any predictive algorithm could track. Refugee communities became centers of unexpected resistance. A group of displaced engineers in a temporary settlement near the Andes developed computational camouflage technologies that could make human technological signatures virtually invisible to Vorax scanning systems. What looked like a simple refugee camp was actually a high-tech research facility disguised by human creativity. Elena's team developed the first true counter to Vorax drone swarms, an algorithmic warfare technique that turned the aliens' own adaptive systems against themselves. Each Vorax drone destroyed became a potential carrier of computational disruption, introducing cascading errors into their networked intelligence. The resistance wasn't just technological, it was psychological. Humanity's greatest weapon was its unpredictability. Where the Vorax expected linear responses, humans provided quantum complexity. Military strategists worked alongside artists. Programmers collaborated with musicians. Theoretical physicists found common ground with urban designers. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A group of high school students in Mumbai discovered a way to introduce computational noise into Vorax communication frequencies. What seemed like random interference was actually a sophisticated method of disrupting alien computational systems. The Vorax had calculated humanity's potential responses with mathematical precision. They had modeled every likely scenario, every potential method of resistance. They had not calculated human spirit. Elena watched as another Vorax drone squadron experienced systemic failure. These weren't traditional victories. They were computational poetry, moments of human innovation that defied traditional understanding of conflict. "We're writing a new language of resistance," she told her team. One the Vorax can't translate. Each failure of the alien systems was a testament to human adaptability. Where traditional military might would have collapsed, humanity was transforming. Every attack became an opportunity for innovation. Every lost system became a chance to develop something more advanced. The fractured resistance was becoming something else entirely. Not a military force, not a technological network. A living, breathing, computational organism of human potential. As night fell over the Atacama Desert, Elena Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. The invasion wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning to reveal humanity's true nature. The breakthrough came from the most unexpected place, a seemingly abandoned research facility nestled in the remote mountains of New Zealand. Dr. Marcus Chen stood before a wall of quantum computational arrays, his fingers tracing invisible patterns of potential and probability. What other scientists saw as an impenetrable alien technological system, Chen saw as an intricate puzzle waiting to be unraveled. The Vorax communication network was a marvel of computational engineering. Layers upon layers of predictive algorithms, self-correcting systems that could anticipate and neutralize potential threats with terrifying precision. Most would have seen an insurmountable challenge. Chen saw opportunity. His team had been studying the quantum communication patterns captured during the initial invasion. Not just the obvious signals, but the microscopic variations, the computational whispers that existed between established data streams. Perfection is a weakness, Chen muttered, a phrase that had become something of a mantra among the global resistance network. The key revelation was deceptively simple. The Vorax's predictive technologies relied on rigid mathematical models that assumed all intelligent species would respond within a narrow range of probabilistic outcomes. Their entire technological paradigm was built on the assumption of predictability. Humanity was anything but predictable. A global network of innovators began to take shape. Scientists, programmers, engineers, and unexpected volunteers from every conceivable background started implementing Chen's theories. They weren't just resisting. They were creating an entirely new form of technological warfare that existed beyond the Vorax's comprehension. In a converted shipping container in Sao Paulo, a team of neural network specialists worked alongside retired game designers. Their project, creating computational systems that could think like human creativity. Unpredictable, emotional, fundamentally illogical. A group of musicians in Berlin discovered that complex musical compositions could be translated into computational interference patterns. What seemed like random noise to the Vorax computational systems was actually a sophisticated method of introducing uncertainty. Chen's team developed what they called quantum uncertainty engines, computational systems designed to exist in multiple potential states simultaneously. Traditional computing was binary. These new systems embraced complexity, uncertainty, and perpetual change. The resistance was no longer just fighting. They were reimagining the very nature of technological conflict. Isolated research groups began to connect through quantum-entangled communication networks. Information flowed not through traditional pathways, but through computational channels that defied standard interception or prediction. "We're not trying to beat their technology," Chen explained to a group of international researchers during a secure quantum conference. "We're trying to fundamentally change how technology itself is understood." Each breakthrough was a collaborative effort. A mathematician in Mumbai would develop a theoretical framework. A computer engineer in Toronto would translate that framework into practical application. A neural network specialist in Seoul would find ways to implement the concept. The Vorax had studied human communication networks. They understood our internet, our satellite systems, our traditional modes of information exchange. What they couldn't comprehend was humanity's capacity for improvisational innovation. Refugee communities became unexpected research centers. A group of displaced engineers in a temporary settlement developed computational camouflage technologies that could make human technological signatures virtually invisible to Vorax scanning systems. The most powerful weapon wasn't a piece of technology. It was the human capacity to reimagine possibility. Chen's quantum uncertainty engines began to produce results that defied conventional understanding. Computational systems that could adapt faster than they could be analyzed. Communication networks that existed in multiple states simultaneously. Defensive technologies that were more living organism than machine. As the research facility hummed with computational energy, Dr. Chen allowed himself a moment of reflection. The invasion wasn't just a threat. It was an opportunity to push the boundaries of human technological understanding. Humanity was about to show the universe that true intelligence wasn't about prediction. It was about potential. The Vorax began to realize something was fundamentally wrong with their invasion. Their perfectly calculated assault experienced inexplicable disruptions that defied all known computational models. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood in the converted research vessel that had become humanity's most advanced mobile command center. The ship moved through space like a living computational organism, its systems constantly shifting, adapting, reinventing themselves faster than any traditional technological framework could comprehend. Communication networks collapsed without warning. Entire assault squadrons became confused by introduced computational anomalies. What should have been a systematic conquest had transformed into a nightmare of technological uncertainty. "We're not fighting a war," Elena told her core team. "We're teaching them a new language of existence." The mission was both simple and impossibly complex. Each movement was designed to introduce controlled chaos into the Vorax's rigid computational systems. It was warfare reimagined as a complex, living system of strategic improvisation. Retrofit mining platforms in the asteroid belt became unexpected strongholds of resistance. What the Vorax saw as simple resource extraction sites had transformed into intricate defensive networks. Automated mining drills became precision weapons. Communication relays became computational warfare platforms that could reconfigure themselves faster than the alien systems could analyze. In the cold darkness of space, human ingenuity became a weapon more powerful than any traditional armament. A breakthrough came from a team of researchers working in a makeshift laboratory hidden within an abandoned orbital research station. They had discovered how to create computational echoes, signal patterns that could multiply and distort the Vorax's tracking systems. The alien invaders had studied human military history. They understood conventional warfare, hierarchical command structures, and predictable response patterns. What they couldn't comprehend was humanity's capacity for spontaneous, decentralized innovation. Elena's team developed advanced computational camouflage techniques that made human technological signatures virtually invisible. Entire fleets could move through space, leaving nothing more than quantum-level whispers that the Vorax computational systems struggled to interpret. Communication became a weapon. A group of linguists and computer scientists developed signal patterns that existed in multiple potential states simultaneously. What seemed like random noise to Vorax scanning systems was actually a sophisticated method of transferring critical information. The resistance wasn't just technological. It was a fundamental reimagining of how intelligence could operate. Refugee communities became unexpected research centers. A group of displaced engineers in a temporary orbital settlement developed technologies that could introduce microscopic uncertainties into the Vorax's computational networks. Each uncertainty was a weapon, each disruption a strategic victory. "We're not trying to destroy them," Elena explained during a secure quantum communication briefing. "We're showing them the limitations of their own understanding." The most powerful weapon wasn't a piece of technology. It was the human capacity to embrace uncertainty, to find opportunity in chaos. Vorax assault squadrons found themselves confronting impossible scenarios. Defensive systems that should have been predictable became living, breathing computational organisms. Attack vectors that should have been clear became maze-like landscapes of technological possibility. Each failure of the alien systems was a testament to human adaptability. Where traditional military might would have collapsed, humanity was transforming. Every attack became an opportunity for innovation. Every lost system became a chance to develop something more advanced. The fractured resistance was becoming something else entirely. Not a military force, not a technological network. A living, breathing computational organism of human potential. As the converted research vessel moved silently through the darkness between planetary systems, Elena Rodriguez understood something profound. This wasn't just a battle for survival. This was humanity's opportunity to redefine the very nature of technological conflict. The Vorax had calculated humanity's potential responses with mathematical precision. They had modeled every likely scenario, every potential method of resistance. They had not calculated human spirit. Warfare had become something else entirely, a dance of computational possibility, a language of potential that the Vorax were only beginning to understand. The final confrontation emerged in the vast space between Jupiter and Saturn, a battlefield that would become legendary in the annals of cosmic conflict. The Vorax had assembled what they considered the ultimate assault formation, a mathematically perfect combat array that had crushed thousands of civilizations across multiple star systems. Dr. Marcus Chen watched from the quantum communication hub of the advanced research vessel. His fingers danced across holographic interfaces, each movement a calculated response to the incoming alien threat. Beside him, Captain Elena Rodriguez stood with a calm that belied the magnitude of the moment. Humanity's response defied all known tactical principles. Hundreds of thousands of modified vessels converged, a fleet that looked like chaos, but moved with an impossible organic intelligence. Research platforms, mining ships, retrofitted communication arrays, and experimental craft merged into a living, breathing computational organism. "They won't understand this," Chen murmured, tracing the complex communication pathways that connected the human fleet. The Vorax assault formation was a marvel of mathematical precision, perfectly synchronized drone squadrons, quantum-locked weapon systems, predictive algorithms that could calculate potential resistance responses milliseconds before they could be implemented. But they had never encountered human creativity. Each human vessel carried more than traditional weaponry. They were computational Trojan horses, living systems designed to introduce uncertainty into the most advanced technological network ever conceived. Where the Vorax expected linear responses, humans provided quantum complexity. A mining platform that had been retrofitted in the asteroid belt now served as a primary communication node. Its systems were a hybrid of human innovation, part mechanical, part computational, part something entirely new. Retired satellite communication engineers worked alongside quantum physicists, creating technologies that existed in multiple potential states simultaneously. The first wave of Vorax assault drones encountered something impossible: communication networks that shouldn't exist, defensive systems that changed their fundamental nature faster than they could be analyzed, weapon signatures that defied traditional computational tracking. Elena's voice cut through the communication network. "Introduce secondary quantum variance patterns," she commanded. It wasn't a military order. It was an invitation to collective innovation. Across the human fleet, researchers and pilots became something more than traditional combatants. They were computational artists, creating a live performance of technological resistance. Each movement was a mathematical statement. Each communication burst a complex linguistic challenge. The Vorax computational systems began to experience something they had never encountered: true uncertainty. Drone squadrons found their predictive algorithms collapsing. Weapon systems discovered their targeting mechanisms becoming unreliable. Communication networks experienced cascading failures that shouldn't have been possible. Dr. Chen had prepared for this moment. The quantum uncertainty engines developed in hidden research facilities were more than weapons. They were a fundamental reimagining of technological interaction. "We're not destroying them," Chen explained to his team. "We're teaching them a new way of understanding existence." The battle existed in spaces between traditional understanding. It was a conflict of potential, of possibility, of computational imagination. Vorax assault formations began to fragment. Their perfect mathematical arrays started to collapse, experiencing computational disruptions that defied their most advanced predictive models. What should have been a systematic conquest became a landscape of technological uncertainty. Elena watched as another Vorax squadron experienced systemic failure. These weren't traditional victories. They were computational poetry, moments of human innovation that defied established understanding of conflict. The research vessel moved like a living system, its computational networks expanding and contracting, creating communication pathways that existed in multiple potential states. It wasn't a ship. It was a computational organism that challenged the very definition of technological interaction. As the confrontation reached its critical moment, something extraordinary happened. The human fleet wasn't just resisting. They were communicating in a language the Vorax had never encountered. A language of potential. A language of possibility. A language of human spirit. The space between Jupiter and Saturn became more than a battlefield. It became a moment of cosmic transformation. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. When the energy signatures faded, the Vorax assault fleet had been completely neutralized, not through superior firepower, but through a revolutionary approach to technological conflict that defied every established understanding of warfare. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the research vessel, her hand resting lightly on a quantum communication panel. Dr. Marcus Chen sat beside her, his fingers tracing complex computational patterns that were still emerging from the recent confrontation. They had done more than defend humanity. They had fundamentally challenged the Vorax's understanding of intelligent resistance. The aftermath was not a traditional scene of destruction, where one might have expected debris fields and ruined spacecraft. There was instead a complex quantum signature that seemed to pulse with potential. The Vorax assault formation had not been destroyed. It had been transformed. "We didn't defeat them," Chen said quietly. "We communicated with them in a language they've never encountered before." Scattered reports came in from research stations and communication nodes across the solar system. The human fleet had not just survived. They had rewritten the fundamental understanding of technological interaction. Each modified vessel carried with it a complex computational signature that was part weapon, part communication attempt, part living system. Elena understood something profound in that moment. This wasn't a traditional victory. This was a cosmic conversation. Research teams began analyzing the quantum echoes left behind by the confrontation. What they discovered defied traditional scientific understanding. The Vorax technological systems hadn't been destroyed. They had been fundamentally altered at a quantum level. Communication patterns emerged that were neither human nor Vorax. They were something entirely new. In orbital research stations, on planetary bases, in makeshift communication hubs scattered across human-controlled space, scientists began to piece together what had actually happened. The battle was more than a conflict. It was a moment of unprecedented technological evolution. Dr. Chen's quantum uncertainty engines had done more than disrupt Vorax systems. They had introduced a fundamental transformation in how technological intelligence could communicate. "We showed them possibility," Elena said, her voice a mixture of wonder and strategic precision. The human fleet had not approached the confrontation as a traditional military engagement. Each vessel was a living computational organism, capable of adapting, communicating, evolving faster than any traditional technological system could comprehend. Refugee research teams that had been scattered across various orbital platforms began sharing their initial findings. The Vorax computational network had experienced something beyond traditional technological failure. It had encountered a form of intelligence that existed in multiple potential states simultaneously. Reports suggested that Vorax communication networks were experiencing cascading transformations. Their perfect, mathematically precise systems were becoming something else entirely. Not broken, not destroyed, transformed. "This is more than a victory," Chen explained during an emergency quantum communication conference. "This is first contact in its truest form." The space between Jupiter and Saturn had become more than a battlefield. It was a moment of cosmic communication, a place where two fundamentally different forms of intelligence had encountered each other in a way that transcended traditional understanding. Humanity had not just defended itself. It had introduced the universe to a new way of understanding technological potential. The modified research vessel moved silently through space, its computational systems continuing to pulse with the complex quantum signatures of the recent confrontation. Elena and Chen watched as new communication patterns continued to emerge. Complex, beautiful, fundamentally unpredictable. Military strategists would spend decades attempting to understand what had actually occurred during those 20 minutes. Scientists would develop entire new branches of quantum communication theory. Philosophers would debate the nature of intelligence and potential. But in that moment, on the bridge of the research vessel, Elena and Chen understood something simple and profound. They had not just survived. They had changed everything. The Vorax Collective went silent. Their vast technological network, once a marvel of computational precision, now existed in a state of fundamental uncertainty. Other observing civilizations watched with a mixture of terror and fascination. Humanity had done something unprecedented. They had not just survived an invasion. They had transformed the very concept of technological conflict. Dr. Marcus Chen and Captain Elena Rodriguez sat in the primary research facility constructed in the aftermath of the confrontation. The facility itself was a testament to human innovation, a living, adaptive structure that seemed to breathe with computational potential. We didn't just defend ourselves, Chen explained to a group of international researchers. We introduced a new language of interaction to the universe. The implications were profound. Civilizations that had long watched humanity with cautious distance now saw something extraordinary. Humanity was no longer just another emerging species. They were a fundamental force of cosmic innovation. Quantum communication networks began to reveal unexpected discoveries. The confrontation with the Vorax had not been a traditional battle. It had been a complex, multi-layered communication attempt that transcended traditional understanding of conflict. Research teams discovered that the Vorax technological systems had not been destroyed. They had been fundamentally altered. Each computational node carried with it a complex signature of possibility, part weapon, part communication attempt, part living system. Elena understood something profound. This was more than a defensive action. This was first contact in its most genuine form. Scattered research stations across human-controlled space began compiling their findings. The battle had introduced a new understanding of technological intelligence. Where traditional conflict would have resulted in destruction, humanity had created a moment of unprecedented transformation. The facility where Chen and Rodriguez's work became a global center of innovation. Researchers from every discipline converged. Quantum physicists worked alongside linguists. Neural network specialists collaborated with artists. Refugee scientists who had been scattered across various platforms now found themselves at the center of a cosmic revolution. Intelligence is not about perfection, Chen would often say. It's about the capacity to learn, adapt, and reimagine possibilities. Diplomatic envoys from various human governmental systems struggle to understand the full implications. Traditional military strategies seemed obsolete. The confrontation with the Vorax had demonstrated that humanity's true strength lay not in destructive capability, but in adaptive potential. The research facility developed new communication technologies that defied traditional understanding. Quantum networks that could exist in multiple states simultaneously. Communication systems that were more living organism than machine. Elena Rodriguez oversaw the development of what became known as potential communication arrays. Technological systems designed to communicate through possibility rather than fixed information. Each array was a complex computational organism that could adapt, shift, and reimagine itself faster than any traditional communication method. Other civilizations began to send cautious communication attempts. The human response was never what they expected. Instead of traditional diplomatic language, humanity responded with complex quantum signatures that invited further communication. The universe had encountered something new. A group of refugee researchers developed what they called possibility engines, computational systems designed to exist in a state of perpetual innovation. These were not just technological devices. They were living mathematical organisms that could learn, adapt, and reimagine themselves with each interaction. In classified archives, a simple notation was added. Humanity's greatest weapon is not its technology, but its capacity to see potential where others see limitation. The confrontation between humanity and the Vorax had become more than a historical event. It was a moment of cosmic transformation. Diplomatic envoys from various star systems began to request communication with human research teams. They were no longer seen as a potential threat. They were seen as a fundamental force of cosmic innovation. Dr. Chen looked out over the research facility, watching as another possibility engine came online. Computational systems pulsed with potential. Communication networks expanded and contracted like living organisms. Captain Rodriguez stood beside him, understanding something profound. This was more than a victory. This was humanity's true first step into a larger universe.